Our series on high school state rodeo champions continues with our guest, Shirley Hett Mackey from Buffalo, South Dakota. Hey, Shirley, nice of you to take time to reminisce with us about some high school rodeo.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you.
Now, you grew up on the Hett Ranch and riding at a young age?
Oh, yes. I was on a horse as soon as my folks would allow me to be on one, I guess, in the late 40s and the 50s. The ranch is about 10 miles southwest of Buffalo, and, of course, horses were used in our everyday ranch life for checking on and working the livestock. So we were sort of horseback about every day that we weren't in school.
When you grew up, were there family members that rodeoed that you kind of looked up to?
My mother came from the McCrory family, and so I have an uncle who won the Madison Square Garden steer wrestling in the 40s. His brothers traveled with him, and they rodeoed for a few years, way back.
About how old were you when you started thinking about getting into competition for yourself?
Buffalo, where I grew up, about 10 miles from Buffalo on a ranch, and Camp Crook were the rodeos. And as long as we were able to get on a horse and ride, what we could do early on was get into the horse race. And there were no holds barred. I got whipped more than one time with somebody trying to get around me, or me doing the same thing when I was trying to pass somebody. So that was our first experience with rodeoing. And then later on, as we got older, we got to get into the barrel race.
Okay.
There weren't any practice arenas at our ranch. There still isn't. You practice out on the sod in the pasture with barrel racing, and anytime you had to practice roping or anything else that needed to be done with cattle, it would be in the arena at Buffalo. So we didn't get a lot of practice in, and so we had to really buckle down and practice while we had a chance.
What were your favorite events?
Barrels and poles, and my dad said I should learn how to rope. I didn't really enjoy roping. I did have a good barrel horse. We used the Palomino stud, so I had to allow for the time that he needed to be in the pasture with the broodmares, and then I could use him to rodeo.
I see where 1959 was a pretty good year for you. You were the Buffalo Labor Day Rodeo Queen, and then also in 1959, the high school girls cattle cutting state champion.
Yes, I did that 1 year, and that was all of the cutting. I was the queen in 1961 when I had asked my parents if it would be okay maybe if I entered the queen contest at the state high school rodeo. And my dad agreed that I could have a suit made from the Lariat Clothiers in Rapid City. And then for a 4-H project, I sewed a pink corduroy suit, and we spray painted boots and straw hat. So I thought I was really uptown. And we saddle soaped my everyday saddle and the bridle and scrubbed down the Palomino stud that I used for barrel racing and got ready for the queen contest. I was very nervous, and I had studied for a long time getting ready for the personal interview on rodeo history. That's what they had told us would take place. And I did okay. And I can remember getting very nervous about the queen pattern because I was just sure that stud would see somebody over the fence that he wanted to whinny at. But he behaved very well. And I felt like a real plain Jane girl compared to all the other queens who appeared to be so confident and polished, but evidently I had done okay because I did win the queen contest that year and represented the state at the national rodeo.
In that queen competition, how about other events?
The horsemanship was similar to what they would do today in any competition, kind of a reining pattern, but they would let you know what the pattern was prior to that.
You attended Colorado State University in Fort Collins. What were all the rodeo events that you participated in down there?
We had 2 teams that went from that college. We had to travel everywhere. And I lived in the dorm, so we would sneak out on Friday because they lock them up. When we were there, they would lock the door and you weren't to leave or you weren't to get in if you were locked out, and drive all night in order to get to these rodeos. And when we would get done on Sunday, We had to drive all night. So we'd stop at a payphone and call the dorm. Hopefully one of our roommates would answer, or a very nice dorm mother. And she would notify our roommate, and then they'd go down and put a stick in the door so that we could get back in the dorm in the middle of the night. It was different. You couldn't get caught by the campus security, or they wouldn't let you back on the campus.
Shirley, you represented Colorado State University in the Queen contest at the National College Rodeo.
I was first runner-up there at CSU, but the gal that was queen, she got sick, or somebody in her family had passed away. I don't remember which. In 2 days, I had to be ready to go to the National as their queen. And when I got there, this was my first experience of riding a horse that they provided.
Oh, wow.
And they would tell you as you mounted your horse, they would show you a little diagram of what kind of a picture they wanted you to run. And every girl did not run the same pattern. And so you had to look at that and then pretend like you had it really down well, and you took off and you rode. And I did just fine, and the horse acted very nice. I did not place in that competition. I did okay. That same situation happened to me when I entered the Miss Rodeo South Dakota contest in Belle Fourche during the 4th of July competition there, and they had these Appaloosa horses for us to ride, and they were huge. They were very tall. So we had to get on. We had to walk. We led the horse into the arena and had to get on the horse, and that was a challenge because these horses, all of us, said the same thing. They were very, very tall. It was a fun competition, and I was the first runner-up there.
You mentioned a lot of the different places that you traveled to while in college. One of them was the Casper College Rodeo. We have a picture of doing some goat tying back then where the goats were larger than what they are now.
This goat that I'm on in that picture, he was, and you notice that the rope was loose, and I don't know why, because you had to be very careful. They call him the cancer eye goat. And he was very tall, and if there was any rope loose at all where he could get a run at you, he would charge you as you got off your horse and probably knock you over if you got too close. So that's why probably in the picture you saw that we were a little bit more distant than what the girls are in the goat tying today. We tried to stay away from the goat until we could get him at the end of the rope.
I know you were involved with high school rodeo.
For about 17 years, I was the high school rodeo secretary here in Harding County. And when I married into the Mackey family, that was also a rodeo family, and they put on the first regional here in Buffalo. We think it was in 1964. And otherwise our regionals were in Sturgis. I secretary rodeoed the whole time that our two kids were in rodeo, and lots of others. There were a lot of names, and I think that Mr. Stevens sent you a picture of the boards that are out at the rodeo grounds here with all the names of the winners for several years. Some of the families, there were Bales, Painters, Thompsons, Pagans, Nygaard, Nelsons, the Mackeys, Prices, and Dolls. Those are some of the names of the families that were in high school rodeo. And I would just like to say that I don't know that they were any more talented than the kids are now, except that we used horses all the time. You did all of your ranch work with horses. You didn't have four-wheelers and things that you went out on the prairie besides a horse. So all your work was done with horses, and you trained and roped and everything right out in the pasture. So I think maybe that's why there were so many champions from Harding County, because it was part of their working ranch life.
Many, many state and national champions from Harding County.
Yes, there have been. And they were all working ranch kids. And I suspect that's maybe not so much talent as just it was what they did every day, and so it became a way of life.
Have your children and your grandchildren competed?
Yes, we had a boy and a girl, and they have both attended rodeos, did very well in the 4-H rodeos. Our daughter went to the national finals. Connie Stinson Price was one of my biggest pole bending competition, as well as Betty Nelson Burns. and I'm pretty sure you know those names from way back. But as far as my kids going on to nationals, they were there but did not place. They went on to have kids. My grandkids, Cash and Colby Hetzel, are our grandsons from Lemon, and they are very talented team ropers. So we have to follow them around, going and watching them team rope.
There you go.
And so that's just the way it is. You grow up doing it, and so we continue to do that.
I was going to ask you what are your fondest memories of growing up on the ranch and rodeo competition, but Shirley, I think you've answered those questions.
Well, I don't know. I hope so. It's just a kind of a way of life. It's not something that is extraordinary about me. It's just the way you grow up in this area. And the ranch, we were able to raise our kids on a ranch. Very fortunate to be able to raise them in the country and have working ranch rodeo horses for them to ride. And it's just something that everybody doesn't get a chance to do, but we were fortunate to be able to do that, and I really appreciate the fact that our parents sacrificed so that we were able to experience that. Back in the day, I do think it was a sacrifice, because they had to go without things so that they could haul us or take us or
sure.
play, if they want to call it. My dad was a team roper. My mom did not rodeo. Dad said that she was supposed to take care of the house, and so once in a while she'd come down and open a gate for the cows in the corral, but that was her job, was to run the house and the garden and the yard, and we did the riding. She always backed us and was always there for us, and the same way with my husband's family. Same situation, only they had a lot of work to do with hauling livestock around for rodeos, and so it's what we did.
Thank you, Shirley, for joining us here on Black Hills TV.
Thank you very much.